Overwatch 2 has been out for about 2 years now, and while it has managed to hold a steady player count within its core player base, in the public's opinion, Overwatch 2 is basically dead. Now, obviously, these numbers are perfectly fine. Some of the easily impressed would say that they're actually good, but you have to consider just how far Overwatch's reputation has fallen within the last decade, to the point that ever since the game was put onto Steam in their pathetic desperation to keep the game alive, it has always had overwhelmingly negative reviews. When Overwatch first released all those years ago, everyone pretty much unanimously loved this game. I don't know a single person in 2016 who wasn't playing it. The grip this game had on the gaming community for a while was simply unheard of. It was to the point that it literally won Game of the Year back in 2016, which, given the game's current reputation, makes me sound like I'm lying, but I'm not.
I am not crazy!
It's not as if Overwatch 2 is terrible in comparison. I mean, let's be honest, they are literally the same game. But even despite that, this is still not the same game that we all grew to love. There are many reasons for this, but I believe there's one major reason that speaks volumes on how Blizzard have failed to handle Overwatch 2 post-launch. And this would be, in my eyes and many others, the day that Overwatch 2 died. On November 1st, 2019, Overwatch 2 was announced at BlizzCon to massive amounts of hype for the players of the first. No one expected this, and so the news was huge. But soon after, this hype quickly fizzled out as people began to actually question, wait, Overwatch 1 literally came out 3 years ago, why the fuck are they making a new one? Most people reserved their judgment, as it was only fair to wait until we saw gameplay to see why a sequel was in order, only to find out that this was essentially the same game copy and pasted with a 2 put on the end. The only true notable differences was a new GUI, some slight changes to the engine, and the biggest change of all, downsizing the game from 6v6 to 5v5 games. It's an understandable change in an attempt to fix the problem Overwatch 1 has always had with its balancing. Though, as you'll find out later on in this video, this change did not go down well at all. At the very least, it was a terrible day for friendship groups across the globe, where that one friend sadly discovered that he was the 6th friend. But considering just how little the game seemed to differ from the original, really did bring into question, what was the purpose of creating this sequel? I mean, what the hell is this, the MCU? Overall, it just seemed super unwarranted. I mean, obviously, we know why they did it. For money. But they just couldn't outright say that, obviously. The reason they claimed it was necessary for the creation of this game was because of a new PvE mode. Initially, Overwatch 2 was going to be shipped with a brand new PvE section of the game that would be called Hero Missions. This would essentially be a single-player part of the game that they could never quite achieve in Overwatch 1, acting as sort of a horde-type shooter for the majority of its gameplay. These were going to be highly replayable missions with a large focus on decking out your chosen character with new hero talents and upgrades, completely changing the way these heroes were played and making every experience unique for each player. This would include many story elements to expand on the ever-confusing lore of the game, not to mention cutscenes to build on top of that. After news of this game mode dropped, this is what the hype for Overwatch 2 was mainly for. People had enjoyed their takes on PvE already in Overwatch 1, so including news of a massive expansion to those existing PvE systems only made people excited. It finally made sense why they needed to make Overwatch 2 to accommodate these big plans. It was going to be amazing, until it wasn't going to be anything at all, because May 16th, 2023 would effectively be the day that Overwatch 2 died. It was announced on this date that this Hero Missions game mode, the one singular thing people were hyped for when it came to Overwatch 2, the one thing a lot of players held out hope for after months of little to no news about it, was cancelled. The PvE mode was entirely scrapped, with the reasoning being that they didn't want to split up their focus between the live PvP game and this new, ambitious single-player mode. After all, running the PvP mode and the PvE mode was going to be essentially like running 2 separate games. Of course, the reasoning makes sense, but when the company had hyped up this one thing to completely justify the game's creation, it just really doesn't make it excusable. Would it really have been that hard to have 2 separate teams in charge of each game mode? I mean, if you're gonna lay off staff, clearly you had the manpower for it. It didn't help that in between its announcement and cancellation, Blizzard had many roadblocks, such as Jeff Kaplan, Overwatch's former director, leaving the company, company. The pandemic halted a lot of the industry, and just to make matters worse, many damning sexual harassment claims and lawsuits. Obviously, these factors were mostly out of their control, perhaps barring the latter, because I still really can't support the company for this, even after all the changes they've made to create a better work environment. But since its cancellation, it really does pose the question, was the creation of Overwatch 2 really justified? There was a silver lining, however, because they said they would still make an effort to create PvE content in the form of story missions, to appease the players who are really looking forward to the scrapped content. So thankfully, players would still have some form of PvE to look forward to, and it's gone. Yep, on March 22nd, 2024, Overwatch 2's PvE content was entirely scrapped altogether, citing the reasoning as poor sales when it came to these PvE missions, putting all the blame on us, the players, rather than on Blizzard themselves for poor management and execution. The fact they were even charging players for the PvE content is embarrassing, considering how much they failed to deliver on the promised content in the first place. Now, I don't mean to sound entitled or anything. Obviously, Overwatch 2 is a free game, so perhaps financially the support just wasn't there for it. But when a game company is constantly promising features to never deliver on them and then remove them entirely from their games, it just feels really disingenuous. To me personally, this single decision cemented its fate as the day that Overwatch 2 died. But the game's current state still has many problems besides this that have slowly killed the game for me and many others. Easily the biggest issue has been the terrible monetization that Overwatch 2 has had for a while now. Because Overwatch 2 became free and their previous system of loot boxes became banned in a few countries, making them instead lean towards more just simply buying the cosmetics. This in itself isn't the issue. Every game under the sun basically does this already. It's nothing new. But the prices on these cosmetics it's just an actual scam. They are trying to rob us blind. With some of the legendary skins, you can be paying upwards of $40 for some of these skins. This is the same price as Shadow of the Erdtree and more expensive than some amazing games on Steam, which just makes this pricing look even more stupid. Take this new Reinhardt mythic weapon as the perfect example for how far they've taken it. As you launch the game, currently your main menu is literally just an ad for this mythic weapon. So going to the shop to check it out reveals that it costs a whopping £35, aka $45 US. And buying this bundle doesn't even get you the full weapon. This is only level 1 of it. No, if you want the cool kill effect or the other visual effects it comes with, you'll need to either buy mythic prisms or earn them through the battle pass to progress it further. So the fact you already spent this much on the weapon just to be forced to spend more money on getting its full value is actually ridiculous. Like, I love this Genji skin here and I am desperately holding back on wasting my money on it, but this skin will cost me £16, aka $20 just to buy it. Because of that pricing, it really isn't worth it because I can't justify spending that much on cosmetics anymore. This is a far cry from the loot box system, which certainly wasn't perfect either, but I still feel it was a little fairer than this considering you could earn currency through these to eventually save up your coins and get yourself your dream skins. And yes, credits are in Overwatch 2, although only re-added at a later date post-launch. But you can only use these to buy cheap, basic recolor skins that not even many people want, especially when the epic and legendary skins are better than these in every way possible. Really, if you want any cool cosmetics, there's no way to earn it for free. You either need to pay extortionate fees or buy the battle pass and then earn them. And as a cherry on top, a lot of the new cosmetics are just subpar reskins of pre-existing skins. New characters don't come with legendaries anymore. Every cosmetic in the recent years just feels like a drop-off in quality and a lot lazier than they initially were, making people genuinely say that the Marvel Overwatch ripoff has way more effort put into it than this. Which, when you see what they're doing, I mean, can you really blame them? It's like the old adage goes, the people who make Overwatch porn work harder than the people who make Overwatch. And this couldn't be more true, with one of the biggest complaints about the game being its balancing. I have seen people constantly complain about the terrible balancing that the game's had near enough since the game's launch, and people have only gotten more vocal within the last year. Now, for the record, I am not claiming to be a pro player who knows what the game needs or what exactly is wrong with the balancing, because I'm not. I am kinda bad at the game. So feel free to tell me in the comments where where I go wrong here. But when so many pros and longtime fans are complaining or even quitting over this, clearly there is a major issue with the game. A big part of it is simply to do with the game's power creep when it comes to new hero additions. We've had a lot of new characters added within the game's 2-year lifespan, and each one, for the most part at least, has simply dominated the meta at one point or the other. A lot of the time, to me, they just do everything an older hero does, but 10 times better. Take Sojourn, for example, who has dominated the meta pretty much since she was added. Sojourn, to me, is essentially a better version of Soldier 76. Sure, she doesn't have the healing utility of Soldier, but when she has just as much, if not more DPS, far better and more versatile mobility, and not to mention a powerful alt-fire that's easier to hit than a Soldier rocket, why would you ever choose Soldier 76 over her? Kiriko is another example I've seen countless people complain about in the game's lifespan, dominating the support role. Movement, damage, and impeccable survivability have constantly made her an issue for many players. It is stupidly broken that even if a player has poor positioning, their Kiriko can instantly TP onto them, hit them with a cleanse to remove all utility, and effectively give them a get out of jail free card. Her inherent kit having basically everything makes her an obvious pick if you play in support. And Mauga is a notorious case just recently that turned every game into a Maga v Maga slugfest. It was like the worst WWE match ever.
Shut up, bitch!
Although I believe he's been nerfed down now, he still is a problem, and most players cite he just needs a full-on rework rather than nerfs. Your player base thinking a character who just came out a few months ago already needing a rework is laughable. This power creep is to be expected, as it is a thing that happens with a lot of hero-based games these days. There's only so many unique heroes you can make before their kits start getting a bit ridiculous. Either way, this is still something that contributes to the poor state of the game. Even disregarding the new characters, some of the old are still a huge problem. I think I don't need to mention any other example than Sombra for you to know what I mean. She can these days just go invisible for as long as she wants and hack during said invincibility, practically making it impossible to cancel her hack, leading to your death every time. This is just one of the many examples, and the community backlash just speaks for itself. The biggest problem I've been having with the game personally is still within the need for constant counterpicking. I don't think I've had a single game recently where I haven't felt the need to switch my character at least once or twice, or even more than that. You do good as a character for a bit and then get counterpicked by multiple enemies, and then you're forced to switch off to something else, just for this cycle to repeat itself until the game eventually ends. This is part of the gameplay loop that has existed since Overwatch 1, but it has never been worse than in Overwatch 2. This is simply due to the fact that when you keep on adding in so many new characters, the counter swapping only gets worse as the options for who counters who increases. It's like an inflation of counter picks or something. With the new additions added to the base game roster, soon a character goes from having arguably about 5 counters to, in the game's current state, about 8 or more. And these are spread out over each role in the game, only making it more likely that you get more than one counter when you're truly stomping the enemy team. Balancing is always a tricky one, and people have contrasting opinions on many things. It is a subjective matter at the end of the day, but it doesn't change the fact that with so many tweets, videos, and Reddit posts on the subject, clearly the player base is fed up with the state of the game. And probably the biggest controversy the game still struggles with is the game still remaining as 5v5, many stating that this is what ruined the game for them. I think the biggest reason why solely lies in the tank gameplay. Being a solo tank puts a ton of pressure for the tank players in these games, and as a whole makes the class have low impact compared to the other roles in the game, because making the tanks too OP to compensate would and has been an issue in the past. But with them being balanced too, it still makes them feel like they can't sway the tide in the game that much. The role is just way less impactful compared to Overwatch 1, where we had 2 tanks per team. And yes, this was OP in Overwatch 1 due to how powerful shields were at the time, but Overwatch 2 has downscaled the power of shields majorly, so I don't believe this would be an issue if they were to reinstate the 6v6. Clearly people want it, as all I see are players asking for its return, so they would be foolish not to. And as it turns out, as I've been writing this video, a developer video came out essentially soft confirming the return of 6v6, or at the very least they're testing it out again to see if they can find a format of it that would benefit the game greater than 5v5 currently does. The final decision is yet to be seen, but it's definitely a good sign at least. But this is the Overwatch dev team we're talking about. I mean, they've never promised something to then cancel and not deliver on it, right? For many players, if they confirm it's never coming back, then it seems a lot of people decided that they're quitting and they are never coming back. Uno reverse card. Overall, it does just feel like Overwatch over the years has lost so much of its charm for me and many others, with constant balancing issues, lifeless cosmetics, declining enjoyment of the gameplay, and and above all else, the major lack of delivering on promises that even justify this game's existence. It does just feel like Overwatch as an IP has been on life support for a while now. Though it may not be dead in its player count, respect for the game in the gaming community and even in its player base is at an all-time low. I feel only a few more poor decisions will be the straw that broke the camel's back and will cement the end of this game. I do fear the developers, or at least the people in charge of the developers, have gone lazier and in turn greedier. Hopefully these issues can be fixed, because if they don't, there are a slew of upcoming games in the hero shooter genre that will surely steal unsatisfied players when they come out. For now though, at least for me, Overwatch is dead. Maybe 6v6 will save it. Honestly, who knows at this point.